The morning fog hung thick over Marcus Chen's farmland in rural Montana, creating ghostly shapes between the corn rows. He had been working this land for 15 years, ever since his father passed and left him the property. The life was simple but honest. Wake before dawn, tend the crops, care for the animals, sleep when exhausted. Nothing ever changed in this small corner of the world. That particular October morning started like any other. Marcus grabbed his worn jacket and headed out to check the eastern field where he'd heard strange sounds the night before. Probably coyotes again, he thought, though the noises had been different, sharper somehow, almost metallic. As he walked through the tall corn, his boots crunching on the frost-covered earth, he noticed something that made him stop cold. The cornstalks ahead were flattened in a perfect circle, roughly 30 feet across. The plants weren't just bent, they were burned at the edges, leaving black marks that smoked slightly in the cold air. Marcus approached carefully, his heart beating faster. In the center of the circle lay what he first thought was a person. But as he got closer, he realized something was very wrong. The figure wore clothing unlike anything he'd ever seen, made of material that seemed to shift colors in the morning light. The person was female, or at least appeared to be, with pale skin that had an unusual silver undertone. She was unconscious, her breathing shallow. Blood, or something like blood that glowed faintly blue, seeped from a wound on her shoulder. Marcus knelt beside her, his hands shaking. He'd seen plenty of injuries on the farm, but nothing like this. The woman's features were delicate and human-like, but her eyes, when they briefly fluttered open, were a deep violet color with flecks of gold. Before Marcus could decide what to do, a terrible howling erupted from the woods bordering his property. It wasn't the sound of any animal he knew. This was deeper, more guttural, and it sent ice through his veins. 3 creatures burst from the tree line, moving with unnatural speed. They stood on 2 legs but were definitely not human. Their bodies were covered in dark scales and their mouths full of teeth that gleamed like knives. The woman's eyes shot open fully, and despite her injury, she tried to stand. She spoke in a language Marcus didn't understand, her voice musical but urgent. The creatures were closing in fast, and Marcus made a split-second decision that would change his life forever. He scooped the woman into his arms, surprised at how light she was, and ran toward his house. She weighed almost nothing, as if her bones were hollow like a bird's. The creatures howled again, now in pursuit. Marcus had played football in high school and still kept in decent shape, but he'd never run like this before. Fear gave him speed he didn't know he possessed. His farmhouse was 200 yards away, and it felt like 2 miles. The woman clutched his jacket, trying to help despite her weakened state. He could feel her trembling against him. The creatures were gaining, their clawed feet tearing up the ground behind them. Marcus burst through his front door and slammed it shut, throwing the bolt. The heavy oak door shuddered as something massive hit it from outside. He carried the woman to his living room and laid her on the couch, then rushed to grab his father's old hunting rifle from the cabinet. The scratching and howling outside grew louder. Windows rattled in their frames. Marcus had no idea if bullets would even work on those things, but he had to try. The woman on his couch was speaking again, pointing at her strange belt. She pressed something on it, and suddenly, a thin barrier of shimmering light appeared around the inside of the house. The sounds outside stopped immediately. Through the window, Marcus could see the creatures pacing at the edge of his property, but they no longer approached. The woman had created some kind of protective shield. She looked at Marcus with those impossible violet eyes and spoke in heavily accented English. "You saved me. Why?" Marcus lowered the rifle, still catching his breath. "You needed help. That's reason enough." She studied him for a long moment, as if trying to understand his simple answer. Then she winced, touching her wounded shoulder. The blue substance was still seeping out, staining his grandmother's old couch cushions. "I need to treat that," Marcus said, moving toward his first aid kit. "I don't know if human medicine will work on you, but I have to try something." "You know what I am?" she asked, surprise in her voice. Marcus sat down in the chair across from her, suddenly feeling the weight of the situation. "You're not from around here?" "Not from Earth, I'm guessing. Those things outside aren't either." She managed a weak smile, perceptive. "My name is Lyria. I am from a world you would call Andralis, though it has no name in your languages. My ship was damaged in an attack. I crashed here and the Krath followed me." "The Krath? Those are the things outside?" Lyria nodded, then gasped as another wave of pain hit her. "They are hunters, mercenaries. They were hired to capture me, but I will not let them take me back. Marcus grabbed his first aid supplies and knelt beside the couch. Why do they want you? Lyria hesitated, looking away. That is complicated. For now, you should know only that I am grateful. The Krath cannot break through the barrier while my belt has power. But once it runs out, they will come. We have perhaps 2 of your days before that happens. Marcus began carefully cleaning her wound, noting how the blue substance seemed thicker than blood, almost gel-like. Then we have 2 days to figure out how to keep you safe. I'm not letting those things take you. You would protect me. You don't even know me. Marcus met her eyes steadily. You're hurt, you're being hunted, and you're on my land. That's all I need to know. Besides, if I'd wanted a boring life, I wouldn't have become a farmer in Montana. For the first time, Lyria truly smiled, and Marcus noticed how it transformed her face, making her seem less alien and more human. Outside, the Krath continued their vigil, waiting for the barrier to fail. Inside, an unlikely alliance had formed between an earthly farmer and a stranded alien maiden, neither knowing that this encounter would lead to revelations that spanned galaxies. The first night passed in tense silence. Marcus had moved Lyria to his bedroom, giving her the most comfortable space in the house while he kept watch from a chair by the window. The Krath never left their positions at the property line, their dark forms visible in the moonlight like statues carved from nightmare. By morning, Lyria's wound had begun to heal in a way that fascinated and disturbed Marcus. The blue substance had hardened into a crystalline scab, and beneath it her silver-toned skin was already knitting together. When she woke, she seemed stronger, though still weak compared to how Marcus imagined she normally was. Over breakfast of scrambled eggs and toast, which Lyria picked at cautiously, she began to open up about her situation. Her ship had been on a diplomatic mission when the Krath attacked. She'd managed to activate the emergency escape protocol, but the pod had malfunctioned, sending her careening toward Earth instead of her intended destination. Why Earth specifically? Marcus asked, refilling her glass of water, which she seemed to enjoy more than the food. I didn't choose Earth, Lyria explained, her accent becoming easier to understand as she adjusted to English. The pod's navigation was damaged. It simply landed on the nearest habitable planet. Your world is registered in our databases as a developing civilization. We are not supposed to make contact until you reach a certain level of technological advancement. Marcus absorbed this information while washing the dishes. So there are rules about this stuff? Like a galactic government? Lyria smiled at his simplification. Something like that. The Council of United Worlds maintains order among the civilized species. There are protocols, treaties, zones of influence. Earth is in what we call a protection period. You are allowed to develop naturally without interference. But you being here is interference. Yes, she admitted, looking troubled. If the Council knew I was here speaking with you like this, there would be consequences. But those consequences pale compared to what the Krath will do if they capture me. Marcus dried his hands and sat across from her at the kitchen table. Through the window he could see one of the Krath pacing at the edge of the barrier, its scales gleaming in the morning sun. You said they were hired to capture you by who? Lyria's violet eyes darkened and she looked down at her hands. By someone who wants to prevent my mission from succeeding. Someone who benefits from continued conflict in my region of space. It was clear she was holding something back, but Marcus didn't push. He'd learned from years of dealing with skittish animals that patience worked better than pressure. Instead, he changed the subject. How long will that barrier hold? Lyria touched the device on her belt, and a holographic display appeared in the air, showing symbols Marcus couldn't read. Approximately 36 more hours at current drain rate. The Krath are testing it periodically, which uses more power. Once it fails, they will attack immediately. Marcus stood and walked to the window, studying the creatures outside. They were big, probably 7 feet tall, with powerful builds. He counted 5 of them now, 2 more having joined during the night. Can they be killed? Yes, but they are formidable warriors. Their scales are resistant to most weapons, and they hunt in coordinated packs. Even if you had military weapons, I would not favor our chances. We need to get you off-world then, Marcus said. Can you repair your ship? Lyria shook her head. The escape pod self-destructed after landing. Standard protocol to prevent technology from falling into the hands of developing worlds. My main ship is gone, destroyed in the Krath attack. Even if it survived, it would be light years away by now. Marcus felt the weight of their situation settling over him. They were trapped in his farmhouse with alien hunters waiting outside, and Lyria's only protection would fail in a day and a half. He'd faced difficult situations before losing the farm's income during a drought, dealing with his father's death, surviving alone for years, but nothing like this. "What about calling for help?" he asked. "Can you contact your people?" Lyria brightened slightly. "Yes, actually. My belt has an emergency beacon. I activated it when I crashed, but help could take weeks to arrive. Space is vast, Marcus. Even traveling faster than light, the nearest council ship could be months away from your solar system. Months." Marcus ran his hand through his hair, a habit when he was thinking hard. "We don't have months. We have a day and a half." They spent the rest of the morning planning. Marcus showed Lyria his property, pointing out buildings, equipment, and potential defensive positions through the windows. The barn, the old grain silo, the creek that ran through the back 40 acres. Lyria absorbed everything, her sharp mind clearly working on possibilities. In the afternoon, something changed. One of the Krath approached the barrier more boldly than before, raising its clawed hand. It spoke in a harsh, clicking language, and Lyria's face went pale. "What did it say?" Marcus asked. "They are offering a trade. If I surrender myself to them, they will leave you unharmed. They promise to spare your life and your property." Marcus snorted. "Do you believe them?" "No. The Krath honor their contracts with those who hire them, but they have no honor toward anyone else. Once they have me, they would likely kill you as a witness, and even if they didn't, I would not trade your life for mine after you saved me." "Good," Marcus said firmly, "because I wasn't going to let you go anyway." Lyria looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You barely know me, Marcus Chen. Why risk so much?" He thought about it for a moment, watching the Krath retreat from the barrier. "My dad used to say that you judge a person's character by what they do when they don't have to do anything. You didn't have to help me by putting up this barrier. You could have run, left me to those things, but you protected me too. That tells me you're worth protecting." Something shifted in Lyria's eyes, a warmth that hadn't been there before. "Your father was a wise man." As evening approached, Marcus cooked a simple dinner of chicken and vegetables. Lyria ate more this time, her body adapting to Earth food. They talked about their different worlds, their lives before this strange encounter. Marcus learned that Lyria had never known her father, that she'd been raised by teachers and mentors in what sounded like a very formal, structured society. "It sounds lonely," Marcus observed. "It was duty," Lyria replied, but her voice carried a hint of sadness. "I was trained from childhood for my role. Personal feelings were considered secondary to the greater good. That's no way to live. Perhaps not, but it is the way of my people, especially for those in positions of responsibility." Marcus was about to ask what she meant by that when the light suddenly flickered. The holographic display on Lyria's belt flashed red and her face went rigid with alarm. "What's wrong?" "The Krath. They've found a way to accelerate the barrier's power drain. They're using some kind of harmonic frequency." She manipulated the controls frantically. "At this rate, the barrier will fail in 12 hours, not 36. Marcus felt his stomach drop. 12 hours. They'd lost more than half their time. Outside, the Krath had formed a circle around the property, and Marcus could see them swaying in unison, creating a low humming sound that made his teeth ache. "We need a new plan," he said, his mind racing, "and we need it now." Lyria met his eyes, and in that moment Marcus saw both fear and determination in equal measure. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The barrier flickered again, and the countdown to midnight continued. Marcus paced the living room floor, his mind working through possibilities and discarding them just as quickly. Fight? They'd be overwhelmed in minutes. Hide? The Krath had tracked Lyria from space. They'd find her anywhere on the property. Run? They'd never make it past the barrier before the creatures caught them. "Tell me about their weaknesses," Marcus said suddenly. "Everything you know." Lyria sat forward on the couch, her wound now almost completely healed. "The Krath are primarily ambush predators. They prefer darkness and enclosed spaces where they can use their superior strength and speed. Bright light disorients them temporarily. Their eyes are adapted for low-light hunting. What else? They are cold-blooded like your Earth reptiles. Extreme temperature changes affect them. Too cold and they become sluggish, too hot and they become aggressive but careless." She paused, thinking. "Their sense of smell is extraordinary. They tracked me through space using chemical traces from my ship's exhaust. On the ground, they can track prey for days. Marcus stopped pacing. An idea was forming, dangerous and probably stupid. But it was better than waiting to die. Can they swim? Lyria looked puzzled. I don't understand the question. Are they able to move through water? My property has a creek that flows into a larger river. If we could get to the river. The Krath avoid large bodies of water. Their scales are too dense, they sink quickly. But Marcus, the barrier doesn't extend beyond your property line. The moment we step outside, they will attack. Marcus grinned, the kind of smile that would have worried anyone who knew him. Not if we go under it. He led Lyria down to the basement, a musty space filled with old farm equipment and forgotten family belongings. In the far corner, hidden behind a shelf of canning jars, was a wooden door that Marcus's grandfather had installed decades ago. Storm shelter tunnel, Marcus explained, pulling the door open to reveal a dirt passage sloping downward. Grandpa built it during the Cold War, paranoid about nuclear bombs. It runs about 200 feet underground and comes up in the old grain silo on the east side of the property. From there, it's only 50 yards to the creek through tall grass. Lyria examined the tunnel entrance, her eyes calculating. The Krath may have detected this tunnel. Their ground-penetrating senses are highly developed. Maybe, Marcus admitted. But it's our best shot. We wait until just before the barrier fails, when they're all focused on the house. We go through the tunnel, get to the creek, and follow it downstream. The water will hide our scent and the current will carry us fast. My neighbor has a farm about 5 miles down. Old Bill's got a satellite phone. We can call for help. Help? Marcus. Who on earth could help us against the Krath? Maybe nobody, he said honestly. But sitting here waiting to die isn't in my nature. And you said your people received your beacon. If we can survive long enough, maybe your rescue will arrive. Lyria looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. You are either very brave or very foolish, Marcus Chen. Probably both. They spent the next few hours preparing. Marcus packed a waterproof bag with supplies. His father's hunting knife, a flashlight, some rope, and what food wouldn't spoil in water. Lyria modified her belt device, explaining that she could create a small, temporary burst of energy that might disorient the Krath if they were discovered. It will drain the last of my power, she warned. After that, I will have no defenses. Then we better make it count. As midnight approached, the Krath's humming grew louder. The barrier's glow had faded to a weak shimmer. Lyria's belt device showed only minutes remaining. Marcus and Lyria stood at the basement entrance, ready to run. When the barrier falls, they'll rush the house, Marcus said. That's when we move. Fast and quiet. Lyria touched his arm, her cool fingers gripping with surprising strength. Marcus, if we are separated, if something happens to me, you must keep running. Do not try to save me. Promise me this. He wanted to argue, but the look in her violet eyes stopped him. I promise, he lied, knowing he'd never leave her behind. The barrier collapsed with a sound like breaking glass. Immediately, the Krath howled in triumph and charged the house. Marcus heard them smashing through the front door as he and Lyria scrambled into the tunnel. The passage was narrow and dark, forcing them to crawl on hands and knees through cold, damp earth. Above them, the sounds of destruction echoed through the ground. The Krath were tearing his house apart, searching for their prey. Marcus pushed forward, his heart hammering. Lyria moved behind him, her breathing controlled despite the exertion. They were halfway through when disaster struck. A section of the tunnel collapsed ahead of them, dirt and rocks showering down. Marcus threw himself over Lyria, protecting her from the debris. When the dust settled, the passage was completely blocked. Back, Marcus gasped. We have to go back. But behind them came a new sound, one that froze his blood. Scratching, digging. The Krath had found the tunnel entrance and were burrowing after them. They were trapped between a cave-in and the hunters, buried alive in darkness with nowhere to run. Lyria grabbed Marcus's hand and he felt her trembling for the first time. Not with fear, he realized, but with suppressed energy. There is another way, she said quietly, but it is dangerous and it will reveal my true nature to you. What are you talking about? The scratching grew louder. Marcus could see claws breaking through the dirt behind them, silvery in the flashlight's beam. Lyria closed her eyes and something began to change. Her skin started to glow with a soft silvery light that grew brighter and brighter. I am not just any traveler, Marcus. I am Lyria Thelandris, crown princess of the Andralis Star Empire. And my people do not die easily. The light exploded from her body, not as heat but as pure force. The collapsed tunnel ahead of them disintegrated. the dirt and rocks simply ceasing to exist. Behind them, the Krath shrieked in pain and rage as the energy washed over them, driving them back. Lyria pulled Marcus forward through the newly cleared passage, her entire body blazing like a star. They emerged into the grain silo, and Marcus saw her clearly for the first time in all her alien glory. She wasn't just humanoid. She was something far more, something beautiful and terrible. "Run," she commanded, her voice echoing with power. "I will hold them here. Get to the river." "No! You promised we'd do this together." "I am ordering you, Marcus Chen." Her eyes flashed like lightning. "I am a princess of the royal blood, and you will obey." For a moment he almost did. The sheer authority in her voice was overwhelming. But then he remembered the frightened woman who'd eaten breakfast at his kitchen table, who'd talked about loneliness and duty. He grabbed her glowing hand, feeling the energy tingle against his skin. "I don't care if you're a princess or a queen or the empress of the whole damn galaxy. We're in this together. Now move." Something flickered across Lyria's face, surprise, admiration, maybe even joy. The light surrounding her condensed, flowing back into her body until she appeared normal again, though clearly exhausted. Together they burst from the silo and ran for the creek. Behind them, the Krath recovered and gave chase. But Marcus knew this land like he knew his own hands. He led Lyria through the tall grass, using every dip and hollow for cover. The creek appeared ahead, running fast with recent rains. They hit the water running and let the current take them. The cold was shocking, but it washed away their scent and carried them rapidly downstream. Marcus kept Lyria's head above water as they tumbled over rocks and through shallow rapids. The Krath reached the creek bank, howling in frustration. They paced along the shore but wouldn't enter the water. After a few minutes, their forms disappeared into the darkness upstream. "They'll try to cut us off downstream," Lyria gasped, clinging to Marcus. "They're fast on land. Then we better be faster in the water." They floated and swam for what felt like hours. The cold seeped into their bones and exhaustion pulled at their limbs. But they kept going, driven by survival and something else, a bond forged in fire and desperation. Finally, as dawn began to lighten the sky, they saw lights ahead. Old Bill's farm. Safety, or at least the hope of it. Marcus pulled them to shore and they collapsed on the muddy bank, breathing hard. "We made it," Marcus said, hardly believing it. Lyria looked at him, her violet eyes warm despite the cold. "You saved me again. You refused my order, disobeyed a royal command." "Yeah, well, I'm not one of your subjects," she smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "No, you are not. You are something far more valuable. You are my friend, Marcus Chen." As they helped each other toward the farmhouse, neither noticed the Krath observers in the distant trees, reporting to their mysterious employer that the target was still alive. The hunt was far from over. Old Bill Turner had seen many strange things in his 73 years of farming, but nothing prepared him for the sight of his neighbor Marcus Chen appearing at dawn with a silver-skinned woman whose eyes glowed purple in the early light. To his credit, Bill merely handed them both towels and ushered them inside without asking questions until they were warm and had coffee in their hands. "You gonna tell me what's going on, son?" Bill finally asked, settling into his worn armchair. "And don't bother lying. These old eyes might be dim, but they still work." Marcus looked at Lyria, who nodded slightly. There was no point in hiding the truth now. He told Bill everything: the crash, the Krath, the desperate escape through the tunnel. Bill listened without interrupting, his weathered face showing nothing but calm attention. When Marcus finished, Bill was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, walked to his gun cabinet, and pulled out a military-style rifle that looked far too modern for a simple farmer to own. "Bill?" Marcus said, confused. "Wasn't always a farmer," Bill said, checking the weapon with practiced ease. "Did some work for the government back in the day. Special projects, things I can't talk about even now. But I learned a few things, including how to recognize when something ain't right." He looked at Lyria. "Your Majesty, or whatever I'm supposed to call you, those creatures still hunting you?" Lyria straightened despite her exhaustion. "Yes, and please just call me Lyria. I am far from my kingdom now. Lyria, it is. And they'll track you here eventually." "Without question. We may have hours at most." Bill nodded, unsurprised.
"Then we need to make some calls."
"Marcus, you said she sent out a beacon?"
"Any idea when her people might show up?"
"She said it could be weeks or months." "Not good enough." Bill pulled out his satellite phone, a military-grade device that looked much more sophisticated than what a retired farmer should have. I've got some old contacts, people who know about this kind of thing. If there are aliens running around Montana, there are folks who need to know. Wait, Lyria said sharply. If you contact your authorities, it will create an incident. The Council has strict protocols about first contact. If your government becomes involved, it could jeopardize Earth's status as a protected world. Bill smiled grimly. Ma'am, I hate to break it to you, but we're already involved. You crashed here, brought those hunters with you. The cat's out of the bag. Question is, do we handle this quiet-like with people who know how to keep secrets, or do we wait for those Krath things to tear through the countryside until someone notices anyway? Lyria looked conflicted, clearly weighing her duty to protocol against their immediate survival. Marcus made the decision for her. Make the call, Bill. We need help, and we need it now. Bill spoke into the phone in coded language that Marcus couldn't quite follow. When he hung up, his expression was serious. Help's coming.
ETA 3 hours?
But here's the problem. They want us to stay put and keep the princess safe until they arrive. Those Krath show up before then, we're on our own. I will not let either of you die for me, Lyria said firmly. Perhaps I should leave, draw them away from this place. No. Marcus's voice was harder than he'd ever heard it. We stick together. That's kept us alive this far. Bill went to his window, scanning the fields. Smart thinking. Predators like these, they'll expect the prey to scatter. We stay together, we're stronger. He turned back to them. Now, Your Highness, you mentioned you were on a diplomatic mission. Want to tell us what was so important that someone would hire Krath assassins to stop you? Lyria hesitated, old training warring with new trust. Finally, she sighed. My star system has been at war for 3 generations. 2 rival factions fighting over resources and territory. Millions have died. I was traveling to the neutral zone to meet with the enemy leadership, to propose a peace treaty. Let me guess, Bill said. Somebody on your side don't want peace? War's profitable for them. Precisely. There are military contractors, weapons manufacturers, nobles who've built fortunes on the conflict. Peace would destroy their power and wealth. They hired the Krath to ensure I never reached the negotiation. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest. They'd let millions keep dying just to protect their money? War brings out the worst in all species, Lyria said sadly. I thought if I could just reach the talks, if I could show both sides that compromise was possible, the fighting might end. But I failed. The Krath found me, destroyed my ship, and now I am trapped here while my people continue to kill each other. You didn't fail yet, Marcus said. You're still alive. The mission isn't over. How can I complete a diplomatic mission from your planet? Even if my rescue arrives, by the time I return home, the opportunity will be lost. The enemy will think I abandoned the talks. The war will continue. Bill scratched his chin thoughtfully. What if you didn't go back? What if you conducted your negotiations from here? Both Marcus and Lyria stared at him. That's impossible, Lyria said. I would need secure communications, diplomatic channels, authorized representatives. Your belt thing, Bill pointed at the device. Can it send messages to space? Yes, but only short-range emergency signals. Nothing sophisticated enough for diplomatic communications. Bill's smile grew wider. But if you had the right equipment, you could amplify that signal? Reach your people, reach the folks you were supposed to negotiate with? Theoretically, yes. But where would we get such equipment on a primitive world? Lyria stopped, seeing Bill's expression. You have it. Not me, personally. But my old employer might. The facility I used to work at is about 40 miles from here. It's been decommissioned for years, or at least that's what the official records say. But I know for a fact they've got communication arrays there that could reach the moon and back. With the right modifications, maybe even farther. Marcus was beginning to understand why Bill had been so calm about aliens. You worked at a secret government base. Worked there for 20 years. Know every inch of that place. It's mostly automated now, just a skeleton crew. But the equipment's still functional. Bill checked his watch. If we move fast, we could get there in an hour. Set up what you need, conduct your peace talks, and be gone before anyone notices. This is insane, Lyria said, but her eyes were bright with possibility. Even if we reach the facility, even if the equipment works, even if I could establish contact with both sides, why would they listen? I would have no authority, no leverage. You're the crown princess, Marcus pointed out. That has to count for something. In person, yes. But over a communication channel, without my royal guard, without the formal trappings of state, I would just be a voice in the darkness claiming to be royalty. They would never believe me. Then make them believe you, Bill said simply. Tell them things only the princess would know. Offer them something only you can offer. Lyria shook her head. You don't understand. I have nothing to offer. I am one person with no resources, no army, no political power in this moment. Marcus took her hand, startling her with the gesture. You have the truth. You have the courage to meet your enemies face to face or screen to screen, I guess. You have the fact that you almost died trying to make peace. Sometimes that matters more than all the armies in the world. She looked at him, really looked at him, and something shifted in her expression. For someone who'd been trained in duty and protocol her whole life, Marcus's simple faith in doing the right thing was revolutionary. We should move, Bill said, checking his rifle again. Those Krath could show up any time, and I'd rather be mobile than trapped. They loaded into Bill's truck, an old but well-maintained vehicle that started on the first try. As they pulled away from the farm, Marcus looked back and saw 3 dark shapes emerging from the tree line. The Krath had found them again. We've got company, Marcus shouted. Bill gunned the engine, and the truck roared down the dirt road. The Krath gave chase, their powerful legs eating up the ground with terrifying speed. They were fast, faster than any animal Marcus had ever seen. They're gaining, Lyria said, watching through the rear window. Bill took a sharp turn onto the highway, the truck's tires squealing. The Krath followed, keeping pace alongside the vehicle. One of them leaped, landing on the truck bed with a metallic thud. It raised its claws, preparing to tear through the roof. Lyria grabbed Bill's rifle, and despite never having held an earth weapon before, she aimed with perfect precision and fired. The recoil surprised her, but the shot hit the Krath in its shoulder. It howled and fell from the truck, tumbling across the road. Nice shot, Bill yelled, impressed. They have reinforced scales, Lyria said, already reloading. I aimed for the joints where the scales are thinner. 2 more Krath were still pursuing, matching the truck's speed. Bill pushed the vehicle faster, the engine roaring in protest. The speedometer climbed past 80, then 90. The creatures were incredibly fast, but they couldn't quite match the truck at full speed. Gradually, the distance between them grew. They're falling back, Marcus said, watching the Krath shrink in the distance. Don't celebrate yet, Bill warned. They're persistent hunters. They'll track us to the facility. The next hours passed in a blur. The Andralis soldiers efficiently secured the area, their technology making the Krath seem primitive by comparison. Medical personnel attended to Lyria, scanning her with devices that hummed and glowed. They spoke to her in concerned tones about her depleted energy reserves and the risks she'd taken. Marcus and Bill stood awkwardly to the side, suddenly feeling very out of place among these alien visitors. The older woman who'd knelt before Lyria approached them, her expression unreadable. I am Commander Thelora, head of Her Highness's Royal Guard. On behalf of the Empress and all of Andralis, I thank you for protecting the Crown Princess. Her tone was formal, diplomatic, and somehow made Marcus feel like he was being dismissed. We just did what anyone would do, Marcus said, though he knew that wasn't quite true. Few would have risked their lives for a stranger from the stars, Thelora said. Your courage will be remembered. The Empress has authorized compensation for the damage to your property, and a monetary reward sufficient to ensure your comfortable lives. It was clearly meant to be generous, but something about it felt wrong to Marcus, like they were being paid off and sent away. He looked past Thelora to where Lyria stood surrounded by her people, looking more alien now than she ever had in his kitchen. Bill seemed to sense the mood. Come on, son. Let's let these folks do their job. We should check on your farm anyway, see what those creatures destroyed. Marcus nodded numbly and let Bill lead him away. They'd gone perhaps 50 feet when Lyria's voice rang out. Wait! She pushed through her attendants and ran toward them, ignoring the protests of the medical staff. When she reached Marcus, she was breathing hard, not from exertion but from emotion. You were leaving, without saying goodbye. Your people are here now, Marcus said, finding it hard to meet her eyes. You don't need us anymore. You've got your mission done, peace talks happening. That's what matters. What matters? Lyria looked genuinely distressed. Marcus, you saved my life. Multiple times. You gave me hope when I had none. You showed me that kindness exists even between strangers from different worlds. And you think compensation and a thank you is sufficient? What else is there? Marcus asked, finally looking at her. You're a princess. I'm a farmer. You've got an empire to return to, and I've got corn to plant. Our worlds don't connect, Lyria. She grabbed his hands, her cool fingers intertwining with his. Then perhaps they should. Marcus, I don't want to leave things like this. You matter to me. What we experience together matters. Commander Thelora appeared behind Lyria, her expression stern. Your Highness, we must depart soon. The diplomatic situation requires your immediate return. Your mother expects you within the week. I understand, Lyria said, not taking her eyes off Marcus. But I need a moment. Thelora's jaw tightened, but she nodded and withdrew. Lyria pulled Marcus further from the ship, Bill tactfully staying behind. There's something I haven't told you, Lyria said quietly. When I revealed my power in the tunnel, when I called myself Crown Princess, that wasn't just a title. I am the heir to the Andralis throne. The only heir. When my mother passes, I will rule an empire that spans 12 star systems and governs billions of lives. Marcus felt the weight of that settling over him. That's a lot of responsibility. It is. And for my entire life, I have been trained for that responsibility. I have been taught protocol, diplomacy, strategy, warfare. I have been educated by the finest minds in our empire, but no one ever taught me about friendship. No one ever showed me what it means to simply care for another person without agenda or expectation. Her violet eyes shimmered with unshed tears. You did that, Marcus. In 3 days, you showed me more genuine humanity than I experienced in decades among my own people. Lyria, I'm just a regular guy. I don't have anything special to offer someone like you. You have everything, she insisted. You have authenticity. You have courage without arrogance. You have the ability to see a person, not a title or a position. Do you know how rare that is in my world? Marcus wanted to believe her, but reality pressed in on him. What are you asking? That we stay in touch somehow? Send messages across space? I'm asking that you consider visiting my world. As my guest? As my friend, she rushed on before he could protest. I know it seems impossible, but the Council of United Worlds will have to address my presence here anyway. Earth's protected status might be reviewed. And if that happens, there would be opportunities for cultural exchange, for certain individuals to travel off-world under diplomatic protection. You want me to leave Earth? Leave my farm? Not permanently. Just visit. See my world, meet my people. Let me show you the stars the way you showed me the beauty of kindness. She squeezed his hands. Marcus, when I return home, I will be thrown into negotiations that could end a war. I will be surrounded by advisors and politicians and people who want to use me for their own ends. I need to know that someone somewhere sees me as just Lyria. Not the princess, not the heir, just me. Marcus looked into her eyes and saw the loneliness there, the same loneliness he'd felt on his farm for years. Two people from impossible different worlds, finding connection in the most unlikely circumstances. I'd need to find someone to watch the farm, he said slowly, and I'm not good with fancy protocol or royal stuff. Hope blazed in Lyria's expression. You'll come? If they'll let me. If it's possible. Yeah, I'll come. Lyria threw her arms around him in a very unprincess-like hug. Marcus held her, feeling the strangeness of it all. A week ago, his biggest concern had been whether it would rain enough for the corn. Now he was planning to visit an alien empire. When they separated, Lyria was smiling through tears. I will make the arrangements. It may take time. There will be bureaucracy and approvals, but I will make it happen. Commander Thelora approached again, more insistent this time. Your Highness, we truly must depart. The window for safe hyperspace travel is closing. Lyria nodded reluctantly. She turned back to Marcus one more time. Don't forget me, Marcus Chen. Not possible, he assured her. She walked back to the ship, flanked by her guards. At the ramp, she turned and raised her hand in a wave that was somehow both royal and completely human. Marcus waved back, feeling Bill's hand on his shoulder. The ship lifted off with barely a sound, rising into the sky, and then vanishing in a flash of light that left after-images in Marcus's vision. Just like that, she was gone. Hell of a few days, Bill commented. Yeah. They stood in the clearing for a while, processing everything that had happened. Eventually, Bill's phone buzzed. He checked it and chuckled. Well, looks like my old contacts are having a field day. Government wants to debrief us about the alien encounter. Probably spend the next month in meetings explaining what happened. Marcus groaned. Just what I need. Could be worse. Could be dead. Bill started walking toward the access road. Come on, let's see if my truck survived. If those Krath wrecked it, I'm billing the Andralis Empire. They made their way back to the facility, finding Bill's truck intact. The bunker itself was a mess. Equipment destroyed by the Krath's rampage. But the important work had been done. The transmission had gone through. Peace talks were happening. As they drove back toward Marcus's farm, Bill broke the silence. You really going to visit her? Go to space? Marcus watched the familiar landscape roll by. The fields and forests he'd known his whole life. I think so. Scary as hell, but yeah, I think I am. Good. Life's too short not to take chances. Your dad would have approved. He always said the best adventures come from saying yes to the impossible. They reached Marcus's property as the sun was setting. The house was destroyed, torn apart by the Krath search. The barn was damaged, the fields trampled. It would take months to rebuild, cost more than Marcus had. But he found he didn't care as much as he thought he would. Things could be replaced. Buildings could be rebuilt. What he'd gained was irreplaceable. The knowledge that there was more to the universe than corn and cows. That connection could happen in the strangest ways. That he was capable of more than he'd ever imagined. I'll help you rebuild, Bill offered. And that compensation money Lyria's people mentioned should cover it. Thanks, Bill, for everything. For believing the crazy story. For getting us to the facility. For not asking too many questions. Bill smiled. Marcus, I stopped asking questions about the impossible the day I started working for the government. Now I just roll with it. He paused. You think she'll really make it happen? Get you off-world? Marcus thought about Lyria's determination. The way she'd faced down Krath assassins and conducted diplomatic negotiations from a bunker in Montana. Yeah, if anyone can navigate the bureaucracy and make it happen, it's her. Over the following weeks, life slowly returned to normal, or at least a new version of normal. Government agents did indeed want to debrief them, but Bill's old contacts ensured the questioning was reasonable. The story was classified at the highest levels. Officially, nothing had happened. Marcus received a substantial financial transfer from an offshore account, more than enough to rebuild his farm twice over. But more importantly, he received a message transmitted through official channels, written in slightly formal English that made him smile. To see where this goes. To be honest about my feelings. To, as she put it, make my own mistakes rather than living with regrets. Lyria laughed. She was not entirely supportive in her phrasing, but for my mother that is high praise. The remaining weeks of Marcus's visit passed in a blur of new experiences. Lyria arranged for him to see parts of the Empire few outsiders ever witnessed. They traveled to one of the moons where an ancient monastery preserved texts from civilizations that had fallen millennia ago. They visited a space station on the frontier, where Andralis soldiers kept watch over the borders. They attended a cultural festival where species from across the Empire gathered to share food, music, and art. But always, there were the whispers. Marcus noticed how people watched them, how conversations stopped when they entered a room. Some of the court members were openly hostile, questioning why a human was given such access to the princess. Others were merely curious, treating Marcus like an exotic specimen. Through it all, Lyria remained steadfast. She held her head high and refused to hide their growing connection. When a prominent senator suggested that Marcus's presence was inappropriate, Lyria reminded the court that her rescue had been possible only because a human had shown her kindness. When another courtier implied that Marcus was using her for political gain, Lyria laughed and pointed out that Marcus had no political aspirations whatsoever. You're making enemies, Marcus told her one evening as they watched the sunset from a palace balcony. I'm making a point, Lyria corrected. For too long, the court has operated on the assumption that birth and position are all that matter. You've shown me that character matters more. If speaking that truth makes enemies, then so be it. You're going to be empress someday. Those enemies could cause you problems. Perhaps. Or perhaps having a consort who understands both worlds, who can bridge the gap between the Empire and developing civilizations, could be an asset. She saw his expression and smiled. Too soon to talk about consorts? Maybe a bit, Marcus admitted, though the word sent his heart racing. Let's focus on making it through the next few weeks. Those weeks flew by faster than Marcus wanted. His visa had a set expiration, and while extensions were possible, both he and Lyria knew he needed to return to Earth. His farm needed him, and staying too long would only intensify the political pressure on Lyria. On his last night on Andralis, Lyria took him to the highest tower in the palace. From there they could see the entire capital city spread out below them, a tapestry of lights and life. Above, the stars shone with a clarity Earth's atmosphere never allowed. "I don't want you to go," Lyria said quietly. "I know you must, but I don't want you to. I don't want to leave either, but we both knew this wasn't permanent. Did we? I think part of me hoped you would decide to stay, that you would find a way to make a life here." She leaned against the railing, looking out at her world. "Foolish, I know. You have a life on Earth, obligations of your own." Marcus joined her at the railing, their shoulders touching. "It's not foolish, and it's not like I'm disappearing. We can communicate. I can visit again if they'll let me. When I'm Empress, I'll make sure they let you." She turned to face him. "Marcus, these past weeks have been the happiest of my life. You've shown me what it means to be seen, to be valued for more than my title. Whatever happens, whatever the future brings, I want you to know that. I feel the same way. You've changed everything for me, too. Made me see that there's more to life than just existing day to day." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, just being together. Finally, Lyria spoke again. "The peace negotiations are going well. Both sides are drafting a formal treaty. If it holds, it will save millions of lives. None of that would have happened without you. It happened because of you. Your courage, your determination." "Our courage," she corrected. "Our determination. We did this together, Marcus. Everything we've accomplished as a team." The next morning, Marcus stood at the Royal Starport, his small bag packed, ready to return to Earth. The ship that would take him home waited on the landing pad. Ambassador Cirith was there to escort him, along with a small crowd of palace officials who'd come to see the unusual human visitor depart. Lyria stood slightly apart from the others, wearing full royal regalia. In public, she had to maintain her role as crown princess. But when she approached Marcus to say goodbye, her eyes told a different story. "Travel safely," she said formally for the benefit of the watching crowd. Then quieter, just for him. "I'll contact you as soon as you're home. And Marcus, don't forget to look up at the stars." "How could I? You're up here somewhere." She smiled, and for just a moment she let her formal mask drop. "Until we meet again, Marcus Chen." "Until we meet again, Lyria." He boarded the ship, and as it lifted off, he watched through the window as Andralis Prime grew smaller below him. He could just make out Lyria's figure on the landing pad, standing long after the other officials had left. The journey home gave Marcus time to think about everything that had happened. He'd gone to space, met an empress, walked on an alien world, and somewhere along the way, he'd fallen in love with a princess. It was absurd, impossible, and completely real. When the ship finally landed back in his north field, Bill was waiting with the truck. His friend took one look at Marcus's face and grinned. "That good, huh?" "Better than good," Marcus said. "Bill, I think my life just got a lot more complicated." "About time." "You've been too comfortable for too long." Bill helped him with his bag. "Come on, let's get you home. You can tell me all about it over dinner." As they drove toward the farmhouse, now fully rebuilt, Marcus looked up at the afternoon sky. Somewhere up there, light years away, was Lyria. She'd shown him the stars, and he'd shown her what it meant to be truly seen. Whatever came next, whatever obstacles they faced, they would face them together, the earthly farmer and the alien princess, bridging the impossible gap between their worlds one day at a time. It wasn't a typical love story, but then again, nothing about their meeting had been typical. And Marcus wouldn't have had it any other way. He pulled out his phone as they pulled up to the farm, seeing a message already waiting. It was from an unknown number, but he knew who it was from before opening it. "Missing you already. The stars seem dimmer without you here, but they're the same stars you see from Earth. We're looking at the same sky, just from different worlds. That's not so far apart after all. Until next time, my brave farmer. You're Lyria." Marcus smiled and typed back a response. Then he looked at his farm, his land, his home, and then up at the sky one more time. He'd saved a princess, helped end a war, and found something he'd never expected to find. A love that spanned galaxies. And somehow, impossibly, wonderfully, it was just the beginning. Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Do you want me to leave?" "No." The force of her response surprised them both. "No, I want you to stay, but I need you to understand that your presence here is political, whether we wish it to be or not. How I treat you, how much time I spend with you, it all sends messages to the court and the public." "What kind of messages?" Lyria hesitated, clearly struggling with something. Messages about what Earth means to the Empire. Messages about whether the princess values tradition or change. Messages about who I am and what kind of ruler I will be. She paused. And messages about my feelings. The last part was said so quietly Marcus almost missed it. Your feelings? She met his eyes and he saw vulnerability there that even the Krath hunters hadn't brought out. Marcus, I have lived my entire life following rules. Who I can speak to, how I must behave, what emotions are appropriate to show. But when I was on your farm, injured and afraid, you showed me a different way. You acted from the heart without calculating the political consequences. You risked your life simply because it was the right thing to do. Anyone would have done the same. But they didn't. You did. And in doing so, you showed me something I had never experienced before. She took his hands, her cool fingers intertwining with his. You showed me what it feels like to be truly seen. To be valued not for what I represent, but for who I am. Marcus's heart was pounding. Lyria, what are you saying? I'm saying that somewhere between the cornfield and the tunnel, between the peace talks and your goodbye, something changed for me. I found myself thinking about you constantly, wondering what you were doing, if you thought of me, if you would actually come when I called. She smiled sadly. I'm saying that I, Crown Princess of Andralis, have developed feelings that are highly inappropriate for someone of my station, especially for a human from a developing world. Marcus stood frozen, processing this. A princess from an empire spanning star systems had just confessed feelings for him. Him, a farmer from Montana who still had dirt under his fingernails. That's insane, he said finally. Lyria's face fell. I understand if you don't feel the same. The differences between us are vast, and I have no right to burden you with this. No, I mean it's insane because I feel the same way, Marcus interrupted. I've been half in love with you since you glowed like a star in that tunnel and told me you were a princess. Maybe even before that, when you were just a brave woman trying to survive. Hope blazed in Lyria's eyes. Truly? Truly, but Lyria, what does this mean? I'm not royalty. I'm not even from your planet. How could this possibly work? I don't know, she admitted. The court would oppose it. There are laws about royal marriages, requirements about lineage and species compatibility. Even having this conversation could cause a scandal. Then maybe we shouldn't. Or maybe we should anyway. Lyria's grip on his hands tightened. Marcus, I spent my whole life doing what was expected, following every rule, meeting every obligation. It nearly got me killed. It took a farmer from Earth to show me that there's value in choosing for yourself, in following your heart even when it's impractical. Following your heart when you're a regular person is one thing. When you're the heir to an empire, it affects billions of lives. Which is exactly why it matters more. Lyria stood taller, and Marcus saw the princess she would become. If I'm to be empress someday, I want to rule with more than just duty and protocol. I want to rule with compassion, with the understanding that individuals matter, that connection matters. You taught me that. Marcus looked out at the alien city, at the 3 moons hanging in the sky, at the impossibility of their situation. Then he looked back at Lyria, at her violet eyes full of hope and determination and something deeper. So what do? We start small. We be honest about our feelings to ourselves, if not yet to the court. We spend time together during your visit. We see if what we feel is real or just an echo of the intensity we shared on Earth. She smiled. And we face whatever comes together just like we face the Krath. I'm going to have to go back to Earth eventually. My farm, my life, it's all there. I know. And I have duties here that I cannot abandon. But space travel exists, Marcus. Communication technology exists. Distance is not the barrier it once was. Her expression softened. I'm not asking you to give up your world for mine. I'm asking if you're willing to see where this goes, impossible as it might be. Marcus thought about his farm, about the safe, predictable life he'd lived before a spaceship crashed in his cornfield. Then he thought about Lyria's smile, her courage, the way she made him feel like he could face anything. Yeah, he said finally. I'm willing to see where this goes. Lyria's smile could have lit up the entire city. She pulled him into an embrace that felt both foreign and completely right. When they separated, she looked more relaxed than he'd seen her since arriving on Andralis. Come, she said, taking his hand. There's someone I need you to meet. She led him through private corridors of the palace, past guards who bowed but showed no surprise at their joined hands. They arrived at a set of massive doors carved with intricate scenes of Andralis history. The guards opened them, and Lyria led Marcus into a throne room that took his breath away. Sitting on a raised platform, wearing robes that seemed to contain entire galaxies, was a woman who could only be the Empress. She looked like an older version of Lyria, with the same violet eyes but carrying the weight of centuries of rule. Her gaze locked onto Marcus with an intensity that made him want to step back. "Mother," Lyria said, bowing formally, "may I present Marcus Chen of Earth, the human who saved my life." Marcus tried to bow but wasn't sure of the proper form. The Empress studied him in silence for what felt like an eternity. Then surprisingly she smiled. "So you are the farmer who defied Krath hunters and helped my daughter broker peace where our finest diplomats had failed." Her voice was rich and commanding. "Ambassador Sirith's report suggested you were unusual. I see now they were correct." "Your Majesty," Marcus said, hoping that was the right address. "I just did what anyone would do." "That is where you are wrong, Marcus Chen. Most would have avoided involvement. Many would have surrendered my daughter to the Krath rather than risk their own lives. You chose differently." She stood, descending from the platform with fluid grace. "My daughter has spoken highly of you. Frequently. Quite frequently, in fact." Lyria's cheeks flushed slightly, which Marcus found endearing even in this formal setting. The Empress circled Marcus slowly, appraising him. "Tell me, farmer, what do you see when you look at my daughter?" It was clearly a test, but Marcus didn't have it in him to give a diplomatic answer. "I see someone incredibly brave. Someone who was willing to die for peace. Someone who glows like a star when she's protecting people she cares about." He paused. "And someone who deserves to be happy, not just dutiful." The Empress stopped in front of him, her expression unreadable. Then, to his surprise, she laughed. "Lyria, you were right about him. He is refreshingly direct." She turned serious again. "You must understand that my daughter's life is not her own. She belongs to the Empire, to billions of citizens who depend on the stability of the throne. Her choices affect more than just herself." "I understand that, Your Majesty. I'm not trying to take her away from her responsibilities." "Aren't you? Even your presence here causes whispers in the court. Some see you as a distraction, others as a threat to tradition." The Empress's eyes bore into him. "If you care for Lyria, you must understand the burden that connection brings. You cannot simply be friends or companions. Every interaction will be scrutinized, politicized, used by those who seek advantage." "Mother," Lyria interjected, "I invited Marcus here. Any political consequences are mine to bear." "No, daughter, they are ours to bear. Mine as Empress, yours as heir." She turned back to Marcus. "I do not tell you this to discourage you. I tell you this so you understand what you're walking into. My daughter has lived her entire life in a cage of duty. If you offer her hope of something more, you must be prepared to help her carry the weight that comes with it." Marcus met the Empress's gaze steadily. "I'm just a farmer, Your Majesty. I don't know anything about running empires or dealing with court politics. But I know something about carrying weight, and I know that some things are worth the burden." The Empress studied him for another long moment, then nodded. "You may stay as long as your visa permits. But know this, Marcus Chen, I am watching. If you hurt my daughter, there is no place in this galaxy you could hide." The threat was delivered with a smile, but Marcus didn't doubt she meant every word. "Understood, Your Majesty. Good, now leave us. I wish to speak with my daughter privately." Marcus bowed again and left the throne room, his heart still racing. He waited in the corridor until Lyria emerged about 20 minutes later. Her expression was complicated, mix of emotions he couldn't quite read. "What did she say?" Marcus asked. "Many things. Some warnings, some advice, some observations about court politics." Lyria took his hand again, but also something I didn't expect. "She gave me her blessing." "Her blessing for what?" After 45 minutes of hard driving, Bill slowed the truck. Ahead, hidden behind a thick stand of trees, was a tall chain-link fence topped with old barbed wire. A faded sign read, "Government property, no trespassing." "Looks abandoned," Marcus observed. "That's the idea," Bill said, pulling up to a gate that appeared rusted shut. He got out and approached what looked like a broken keypad. His fingers moved across it in a specific pattern, and with a soft hum, the gate swung open. "Like I said, skeleton crew. Most folks don't even know this place exists anymore." They drove down a long access road that ended at a bunker built into the side of a hill. The entrance was concrete and steel, designed to withstand significant damage. Bill parked the truck and led them to another hidden keypad. "Bill," Marcus said carefully. Are we breaking any laws right now? Probably several, Bill admitted cheerfully. But I figure saving the princess and preventing an interstellar war gives us some moral leeway. The bunker door opened, revealing a surprisingly clean interior. Emergency lights flickered on automatically, illuminating a corridor that stretched into the hillside. They descended into the facility, their footsteps echoing on metal stairs. The main communication room was exactly as Bill had described. Rows of equipment, screens, and antenna arrays that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. Dust covered most surfaces, but when Bill flipped a series of switches, the equipment hummed to life. Power's still running, he said with satisfaction. Now, Princess, let's see if we can get you connected to your people. Lyria examined the equipment with growing excitement. She removed her belt device and began interfacing it with the Earth technology, her fingers flying across controls both alien and human. This might actually work, she murmured. The principles are similar enough. If I can boost my belt signal through your arrays. Marcus and Bill watched as she worked, speaking in technical terms neither of them understood. After nearly an hour of adjustments, calibrations, and what looked like creative problem-solving, Lyria stepped back. I believe I can establish a connection to the diplomatic channel. Both sides monitor it constantly for any communication from the other. If I broadcast on that frequency, they will hear me. She paused, but I still don't know what to say that will make them believe me. Tell them your story, Marcus said. Tell them what you went through to get here. Tell them you almost died trying to make peace. Lyria looked uncertain, more vulnerable than Marcus had ever seen her. This princess who could glow like a star and give orders that shook the air was terrified of making a simple transmission. What if they reject me? What if I fail? Marcus walked over and took both her hands in his. Then you fail trying, but you won't know unless you make the attempt. You've been brave enough to face assassins and survive a crash. Be brave enough to ask for peace. She searched his eyes, finding strength there. Then she nodded and turned to the communication equipment. Her fingers moved across her belt device and a holographic interface appeared, showing alien symbols and readouts. She took a deep breath and began to speak in her own language, her voice flowing like music. The transmission lasted 10 minutes. Lyria spoke with passion and authority, her posture straightening as she fell into her role as princess and diplomat. Even not understanding the words, Marcus could hear the power in her voice, the conviction. When she finished, silence filled the bunker. They waited, watching the equipment for any response. 1 minute passed, then 2, then 5. Maybe the signal didn't reach them, Bill suggested quietly. Then the equipment crackled to life. A harsh, guttural voice filled the room, speaking in the same alien language. Lyria's face went pale, and she responded quickly, her tone urgent. Another voice joined the conversation, smoother and more familiar, clearly one of her own people. The conversation continued for nearly an hour, sometimes heated, sometimes calm. Lyria gestured as she spoke, pleading, explaining, demanding. Marcus and Bill could only watch and wait. Finally, the transmission ended. Lyria turned to them, and tears were streaming down her face. Not tears of sadness, but of relief and exhaustion. They believed me, she whispered. Both sides agreed to a ceasefire. They're sending representatives to neutral space for talks. Real talks this time, with binding agreements. She laughed, a sound of pure joy. They're actually going to negotiate for peace. Marcus felt a grin spreading across his face. You did it. We did it, Lyria corrected, looking at him with something deeper than gratitude in her violet eyes. Without you, I would have died in that field. Without both of you, I never would have reached this facility. Bill clapped Marcus on the shoulder. Not bad for a couple of farmers, eh? Their celebration was cut short by a thunderous crash from above. The bunker shook and alarms began blaring. On the security monitors, they saw the Krath tearing through the entrance, having finally tracked them to the facility. Time to go, Bill shouted, grabbing his rifle. They ran for the emergency exit, a tunnel that led to the far side of the hill. Behind them, they heard the Krath smashing through the bunker, destroying equipment in their relentless pursuit. The creatures had lost their prize once. They wouldn't lose her again. The emergency tunnel was narrow and dark, lit only by intermittent emergency lights. They ran as fast as they could, but the Krath were faster. Marcus could hear them gaining, their claws scraping on metal as they crawled through the passage. They burst out into daylight on the far side of the hill, finding themselves in a clearing surrounded by forest. Bill's truck was on the other side of the facility, unreachable. They were on foot with nowhere to hide, and 5 Krath emerging from the tunnel behind them. Marcus, Lyria said quietly, "Take Bill and run into the forest. They want me, not you. You can escape." "Not happening," Marcus said, picking up a fallen branch as a makeshift weapon. It was pathetic compared to the Krath's claws, but it was better than nothing. Bill chambered around in his rifle. The boy's right. "We're past the point of running." The Krath formed a semicircle, trapping them against the hillside. The lead creature, larger than the others, stepped forward. It spoke in broken English, clearly learned specifically for this moment. "Princess, you come now. No more running. These humans die quick or die slow. You choose." Lyria stepped forward, her body beginning to glow with that silvery light again. "I choose that you leave this planet and never return." The Krath leader laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Your power is weak. You use too much. Cannot fight us all." It was true. Lyria's glow was dim compared to what Marcus had seen in the tunnel. She was exhausted, drained from the escape and the long hours of diplomatic work, but she stood straight and defiant, every inch a princess. "Then I will die fighting," she said simply. The Krath prepared to attack, muscles tensing beneath their scales. Marcus gripped his branch, ready to go down fighting beside her. Bill aimed his rifle, knowing bullets wouldn't be enough. And then the sky split open with light. A ship descended from above, massive and elegant, its hull gleaming silver in the sunlight. It moved with impossible grace for something so large, positioning itself between them and the Krath. A voice boomed out, speaking in the same alien language Lyria used, and the authority in it was unmistakable. The Krath froze, their confidence evaporating. The lead creature barked orders and the pack turned and fled into the forest, abandoning their mission entirely. The ship landed and a ramp extended. Figures descended, humanoid but clearly not human, wearing armor that seemed to be made of liquid metal. At their head was a woman who looked remarkably like Lyria, but older, with eyes that had seen centuries. She approached Lyria and dropped to one knee. "Your Highness," she said in perfect English, clearly for the benefit of Marcus and Bill. "Your mother the Empress sends her relief and joy at your survival. We received your beacon weeks ago, but traveled through unstable space lanes to reach you faster. We arrived just in time, it seems." Lyria stared at her, then at the ship, then back at Marcus and Bill. She had been rescued. It was over.